Weather's been very average out there the last couple of days. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever the time is where you're watching this, welcome to our online service today. I'm Mike, if you don't know my name, but I'm sure you all do. I'm actually getting ready for youth group tonight. We're having it at home, and here we're having burgers tonight. So we've got all this stuff here for some yum food, but it is not a nice day out there, is it? It's very below average. So call to worship this morning. Our theme is around being persistent. It's around injustice, and we're taking the story in Luke 18 of the persistent widow who keeps harassing the judge. And when I think about the story, it reminds me of two stories. So maybe as I share my stories, maybe you will think of your own stories. So when I was working in youth justice, and I would often hear people talk about God's judgment and the wrath of God, and I would work with these young people who were the worst young people in society. There was no one worse in New Zealand than these young people, for young people. And I used to think, well, how does God's justice work with these young people who have never even stood a chance? I remember reading through some of the stories of some of these young people and just shocked, really. Like, how could they even stand a chance? One child was picked up by the police at 4 years old, walking down the main street of Hamilton, trying to find mum at 9:30 at night who was drinking at a pub. He didn't know which one, and he had a 6-week-old sibling that he was carrying with him. How does a child like that stand a chance, and how does God's justice work in this situation? And then I think about the time when it came time for me to leave the residence, and there was an incident that had happened in the unit, and over the next few shifts at the residence, it became apparent to me that I can no longer do this job. I can't do it. There was nothing specifically bad that had happened. I wasn't particularly not enjoying my job at that time, but it just was deep within me. I cannot do this job anymore. And I remember talking to my manager after one shift, and I said, I don't think I can come into work tomorrow. I think you need to take me off the roster. And I didn't go back to work, and I never actually went back onto the floor. But I kept flipping over and umming and ahhing in my head, jumping between scenarios, because it was a pretty well-paid job. And I knew that God wanted me to take this youth worker position at that time. And I was being like Jonah, saying, no, I'm not. And in my mind, I kept jumping backwards and forwards between, yes, I can resign. I feel good. No, I can't resign. What about our livelihoods and our bills that we have to pay? And I didn't know what to do. And I ended up getting another job at a lumberyard, or not at a lumberyard, in the forestry. And 20 minutes into my first day, I thought, what am I doing? And I remember coming home, and I called Ed, who was the minister then, and said, tell me how to apply for this position. So God was persistent with me. Yeah, so maybe take a little bit of time to think about, how's God been persistent to you? Or how have you been persistent with God? And how does God's justice fit in this world where there's a lot of injustice? How does it work? What's your stories?